All right, so today we're going to talk about power off stalls or approach to landing stalls. And the first thing we need to talk about when we're talking about stalls is how does a plane stall? So I'm going to draw the wing here. And two of the things we need to talk about is the chord line of the wing and the relative wind. So the chord line right here is an imaginary line that goes from the leading edge of the wing down to the trailing edge. So that right there is your chord line. And relative wind is the wind that is opposite of the flight path. So relative wind is going like this, and it is meeting the wing. So that is your relative wind right there. And where the relative wind is meeting the wing is that angle right there is your angle of attack. So as you can see right there, that's your angle of attack. And normally air is going over and it's going under the wings. And if you get in a situation where you're pitching up too much, then it's going to look like this down here. So you have your chord line, you have your relative wind right there. As you can see, much higher of an angle of attack right there. So in this scenario, the air that's going over the wing is leaving the wing and is separating. So it's no longer producing lift. And when it fully stalls, the heaviest part of the aircraft, which is the nose, is going to fall over right there. And the purpose behind this maneuver is to simulate when we are coming in on the approach to land. If you excessively put too much back pressure and you on your flare and you stall over the runway. So the setup for this maneuver, I'll write this over here. First things first, what I'm going to talk about is the acronym CAS. So first we're going to talk about clearing turns. So clearing turns are very important. So you're going to start off, you're going straight, and you're going to make a 90-degree turn to the left, and you're going to make a turn back to the right. So while we're doing this, when you're straight, you can't see what's behind you. So when you turn 90 degrees to the left, now you can see what's behind you, which that's very important. You're looking out for traffic, you're looking for terrain, or anything of that nature, or towers. And you can make them to the right if you want, it doesn't really matter. Just whatever scenario you're in, but make sure you're doing clearing turns. And then we also need to be doing our before landing checklist before every maneuver. Put that here as well. And that consists of putting your fuel pump on, your landing lights, seat belt, mixture rich, things of that nature. So next on this list is A, which is your altitude. Altitude is going to be a minimum of 1500 AGL. And here in Easton, we have a 300-foot elevation. So that's going to be 1800 MSL, and we don't need to be doing it at that because it doesn't leave you any room for air or anything of that nature. So I recommend doing it around 2,500 feet. That's a safe altitude to do it at. And then S is going to be safe area. And what I mean by safe area is making sure you're not over a very populated town or there's any traffic or anything of that nature. Just making sure nothing's going to compromise safety when you're doing this. So going over it again, we have clearing turns, our before landing checklist. We need to make sure our altitude is a minimum of 1500 AGL. But like we said before, we like it around 2500 MSL. And then safe area, as I said, we're just making sure we're not going to compromise safety. We're not over any towns, anything of that nature. It's preferably to be over an open field or something. And next, actually, so when we get through all this, now we're ready to start the maneuver. So how we do that, we need to get into landing configuration. What I mean by landing configuration is putting the plane, or putting 40 notches of flaps in. And we can't do that unless we're below VFE. VFE is flaps ascending speed, which is 103 in the Archer. So that's the top of the white arc on the airspeed indicator. So when we get below that, we can start putting those flaps in very smoothly. So I'll put that here, 40 degrees of flaps. So once we do that, we're going to pull the power back at 1700 RPMs. And we're going to start slowing down to 65 knots indicated. So 65 KIAS indicated. So once we get to that, we're going to simulate a descent like we're coming into land. So we're going to close the throttle, retard the throttle, and we're going to make a small simulated descent like we're coming into a land, and then we're going to pitch up to about 10 degrees pitch up, and we're going to hold it there until it stalls. So we need to recognize when we're doing that, we need to hold it till it comes to full stall. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get these little indications, which could be a buffet, which would be when the wing is separating, or the wind is separating from the wing, and we're not producing any lift anymore. And that's when we're going to stall. So what you need to do, you're going to hear the stall horn, and then we're going to keep holding it until it becomes a full stall and that nose comes down, and you need to say it to your examiner, stall, and then you're going to go into it's going to stall. So once we do that, we're going to go into the recovery process. So that consists of putting the power full, and you're going to let the nose drop, power full, and then once you get to you're going to do the first notch immediately, and then after you get a positive rated climb, then we're going to do that second notch, and then when we climb up to 76, we're going to go last notch and then climb back to our assigned altitude. So our ACS standards for this maneuver is going to be, like I said before, minimum of 1500 AGL. And then next it's going to be plus or minus 10 degrees on your heading, and then plus or minus 10 degrees on your bank. That's going to take us right into the common errors of this maneuver. So going into that, one of the most common errors associated with power off stalls is not being coordinated, so failure to maintain coordination. And why this is important is because if we don't maintain coordination during a power off stall, then we could go into a spin, or you could go into a turn and stall, which can be dangerous too. So maintaining that proper coordination is going to help you a lot, because you want this plane to be straight. You don't want it to, when you have bad rudder input, it may go into a spin, it could roll over. We don't want that, so you want proper coordination to keep it level. So that's important. The next error associated with this would be failure to maintain pitch, bank, and heading. So what this goes to, if you can't maintain coordination, you're probably not going to maintain your pitch, bank, and heading. So heading, if you don't maintain coordination, then you're going to yaw, or you're going to go left and right, which you could bust your ACS minimums here, which would be plus or minus 10 on your heading. So you don't want that. And you could go into a spin, which is not what we want. And another common error associated with power off stalls would be excessive loss of altitude. So for example here, where this usually happens, I'll draw it out for you. Here's a runway. Where this usually happens at, we're coming in on approach for landing. We get down here, we're very slow, we get into a flare right here. And maybe a gust of wind or something scares you, so you put too much back pressure on the plane and you stall over the runway. That's what we need to do this maneuver for, or to train for scenarios like this. And we do not need to lose a lot of altitude, because like I said, we're very close to the runway right here, so we don't have a lot of room to work with. We don't have a lot of altitude. So we have to be very smooth, and we have to be very, very fast with our recovery. So like I said, our recovery, we're going to let the nose go down to a straight level position, and then we're going to go full power. We're going to take that first notch out immediately. And then once we get a positive rated climb, we are going to put that second notch out. And then once we reach 76, which is our VY, then we're going to take that last notch out and keep climbing. So that's what we do it for. And one of the main things that we're doing when we're practicing this maneuver is we want you to start recognizing the buffets and the small indications of these stalls. So it's going to make you a much better pilot if you come in and you can realize when you're getting too slow and you might start feeling those indications. Well, that brings up another common error. Failure to recognize stall indications. So I'll write that here. Failure to recognize stall indications. And the reason why this is so important is because if we can't recognize those stall indications, then this scenario could happen to us where we stall over the runway. So if we can recognize that, we can get too slow, or when we're getting too slow, we can start to put power in or whatever we need to do to get some more speed and produce a little bit more lift. But then we're going over this again. So like I said, when we start this maneuver, we're clearing the area. We're doing our before landing checklist. We're making sure our altitude is above 1,000 or 1,500 AGL as a minimum. We have a safe area, which means we're not over cities, we're not over any towers, anything like that. We're not going to compromise safety. We're making sure we're in landing configuration. We're making sure that that's 40 notches of flaps. Making sure that we are below VFE when we get to those flap settings. We're making sure that we get down to the approach speed of 65. We're doing that slight descent, pitching up to 10, letting it fully stall, come down, we're recovering. And then we just need to make sure that we aren't losing a lot of altitude. We're making sure we're maintaining coordination, and we're making sure that when we maintain coordination, we're going to maintain the pitch bank and heading as a result of that. But other than that, that's all I got. Power off stall.